Hello and how are you? My name is Winnie Bara. Welcome to our session on health policy, and we are focusing on policy process, what we also call the policy cycle. If you're new here, this channel focuses on health. We do lessons, we do lectures. We also invite experts who bring in concepts and expertise in different topics. So in this series, we are expounding in details about health policy by looking at the different components of it. Like we introduce the concepts, which you can see on our playlist under health policy. We can also go through the significance of health policy, the different types of health policy. Now in today's class, we are going to mainly check on the cycle, or rather the step by step of developing a policy and what each step entails. So be with me all the way to the end, and if you've not subscribed, please remember to do so. So here is a summary of the health policy formulation. Some books will be showing you 7 stages, others are talking about 6 stages, but I kind of liked this diagram because it's really summarized it into short and straightforward stages or steps. So we have step 1, which is called problem definition. Some people separate the agenda setting, but in this one it's combined. And then we have constructing the policy alternatives or policy formulation. Stage 3 is choice of the solution or selection of the preferred option, policy design, implementation, and then we finish with evaluation stages. So we shall break it down in simple stages. Some of the stages may differ in terms of the naming, but the explanation is just as clear and purposeful as it's supposed to be. So starting with the first stage, that is problem identification. So in stage 1 of problem identification, what happened is in this stage, we focus on being able to diagnose the problem that is at hand. We're able to identify the opportunities and the objectives that requires a policy response. So you find, for instance, you are in a given department and there are certain policies that possibly they are not meeting the target or they are not meeting the outcome that one is intended for. And for this, you may have a problem identification aspect where you get to evaluate this policy and being able to see what exactly is a constraint, is it an opportunity, or is it an objective that you can look into and develop a response to it. So in this stage is where we say that the problem is usually defined and articulated most of the time by individuals or by team. So in the case of institution, you can use different parties to help with problem identification. For instance, you could identify a problem in a particular policy through social media. You could also identify maybe through interest groups or parties, and these could be points that can help in problem identification aspects. Right, and the second stage is agenda setting. So in the agenda setting, it's normally advised that you check on the agendas either by comparing as systemic agenda or is it a government agenda. So an agenda by definition includes what will stimulate the thinking and what is going to stimulate the opportunity for the policy to be developed on. So in this case, an agenda can be a systemic agenda or it can be a government agenda. So a systemic agenda here majorly is an agenda that is publicly known, or rather the public is aware about it, has experienced it or has seen it, and so creates a point of discussion. So you find that the public members of the community could already be discussing it. Good example could be a situation where there's inflation rate and the prices for goods and services are rising or they are very high and the public will be complaining. However, it could have government agendas. This looks into issues that policymakers are addressing at a certain time. And this mostly is guided by legislatures or legislation individuals who participate in maybe parliamentary sit downs or parliamentary discussions. So we're being told that before a policy can be formulated and adopted, the issue must compete for space on the agenda. Like it must compete on the list of items that should be actively considered for further discussion or progression to the next level. So key Members of the agenda setting stage could include think tanks, that is stakeholders who have input on brainstorming, mind mapping, and development of discussion points. Then we have interest groups, we have media, and also government officials. So how do you agenda set? So agenda setting can be guided by something like this, where you want to assess the problem stream, the policy stream, and also the political stream. And then out of it, you see opportunity for getting agenda items. Remember, the agenda can be systemic or it can be public. So if it is systemic, you are looking in the public domain. So what is in the public domain that can be of interest that should be discussed? And then you can check in the policy stream, like what is in the or existing policies that can be an area of discussion. And then politically, what are the policymakers thinking around? Or what are the politicians reasoning around that can be used for discussions? And stage 3 is about policy formulation stage. So in the policy formulation stage, it's said that once the problem has been identified and they have been made into various agendas, then the policy formulation committee is able to sit down and address these problems. So they come with alternative policies that are looking into it going to help in addressing the problem. So most of the time, you sit down and consider policy options that are best fit for the particular problem or opportunities. So policy formulation is looking at which options based are best fit for handling that particular problem or opportunity, or another word is how best are we going to solve this problem by using the best formulated policies. Then stage 4 is about policy adoption and or also known as policy legitimation. So this involves the process of agreement and passage of the new policy by relevant institution of government so that the policy option is put into effect. So what do we mean here? In this stage, what is happening is we are allowing the policy to become the guiding document for the community. So we want to agree, we want to pass this policy as the new relevant laws that can guide the different procedures and processes in the community or in the setup that we are in. So the adoption of this policy, it can depend on the frameworks. For example, if you are in the government or you are dealing with a government agenda, one might be guided by the national policymaking frameworks pertaining the government agendas. However, it can also involve political discussions. For instance, in the government ministries, before a policy becomes adopted, it needs to go through political discussions, debate, before it can be passed into an agreeable policy. So the adoption processes may differ or it may be different, but the purpose is to ensure that it has been taken in as the new law or the new policy. Right. Once the policy passes through the adoption stage, or what you call legitimatization, the policy goes into stage 5, that is on policy implementation. In this stage, what happened is we are turning these policy decisions into action, or rather we are using an action plan or a framework to ensure that we put it into place or we put it into action. So for example, you may find a committee being formulated to help with policy implementation so that we find that fit for purpose approach which ensures that the implementation process is successful. And this could involve situations like budgeting for the policy, creating a plan, could be a long-term plan or a short-term plan on how the policy will run. Then we have issues like who are the actors and their roles. Do we have specific stakeholders who could be benefiting from this particular policy and how are they coming in? Then getting in the right skills, right technical expertise, and also basically removing also conflicting aspects of the policy that you want to test on and confirm. So implementation is a key stage because it is at this particular moment that you can look at the different components that will make this policy successful. So it brings this policy decision now into the action table, checking onto the required needs like budgets, plans, stakeholders and their responsibility, or actors and their responsibility, the right skills and technicalities, and then any conflicting aspects that can be eliminated is very critical. And in the policy implementation stage, there are those components I've mentioned, like budgeting, technicalities, stakeholders, and roles and responsibilities. So you're told there are certain features that you can prioritize to help us like have a good policy implementation stage. And one of it is looking at leadership and governance, like allocating senior lead who has good authority to stamp on that policy and ensuring that it's well understood for the purpose of implementing it properly. You can also secure the needed expertise that is needed, or someone who can hold of the authority or can hold the leadership with the required qualifications, and then unite implementing actors or bring together people who are part and parcel of the governance and with their different responsibility. Again, it's good to agree on the roles and then establish a project governance arrangement that is visible and can be done properly. Then looking on the second bit, that is on planning and project management, this now looks into bringing into place aspects of mapping, that is mapping on the how, the what, when, who and for whom, and then you can map and monitor also resources and timelines. You can employ proper project management tools like the proper framework, milestones, tools, and then there's consideration of technology that needs early designing. And then, of course, with this planning aspect, you can look into monitoring and approaches. For instance, what monitoring tools will you wish to use? What methodology do you wish to analyze the project as it is progressing? And the other key part of implementation stage is communication and engagement. That is, the team needs to look into how to plan and deliver the project. How do we communicate it to the required stakeholders? How do you engage meaningfully and regularly with the stakeholders or the population that you're serving, or the population that the policy is targeting? And then considering bigger audiences or the internal audiences, how are we going to pass this policy and ensure that each and everybody whom it touches on gets to hear about it and engages productively on it? And of course, we have stage 6, which is monitoring and evaluation. And by definition, we can define this separately, where we say in monitoring is continuous function that uses systematic collection of data on specified indicators to help us with management and help with also the main stakeholders of the policy to see the indication in terms of the extent of progress and achievement of the objective. So what monitoring does, it allows one to anticipate problems with the policy and proactively make the appropriate adjustment. So we look at policy making as a continuous process where we are able to analyze the policy and being able to tell if there's ability to make progress, or there are certain achievements that that the policy can meet, and if it can achieve the objective to the anticipated targets or anticipated goals. However, with policy monitoring, one can also project any anticipated problems and proactively eliminate any of these problems or come up with appropriate adjustment before the policy can be adopted. And so with the policy monitoring and evaluation, there are certain aspects one can do to ensure that there's efficiency. For example, there's planning stage of monitoring where we are able to decide the data that one will collect, analyze, and report on regarding the policy. So there's certain components basically that one can concentrate on. So if maybe it's the policy and you want to focus on the budget that is being used to implement the policy, then what are these components of the budget that you want to look at. There's also aspect of designing, so that's part of the policy. So in designing, as a monitoring and evaluation as expert, you're able to design the data, like the data collection tools, the analysis tool, and the reporting approaches for you to disseminate the data and also to disseminate the report to the required stakeholders. And the other bit is selecting methods. And in these methods is the data collection methods. Are you going to use qualitative data, or will you prefer to use quantitative data? So those are different approaches. And then we've got now to do the real data collection and analysis stage. So in this case, you gather the information pertaining the specific area that you have chosen to prioritize on. So the data collection can be done based on the tools you have settled on. So if you settled to do qualitative and data collection, then that will be the tool you're going to use. And you can test the tools, like do piloting or do pre-test to just check that they have met the needed requirement and the threshold of the data you want to collect on. And you can now go forward and do the systematic data analysis. Of course, this requires technical know-how in terms of operating the different types of data analysis tools. And the last part is reporting, that is now coming together to just compile the information, whether you will put it in writing or it will be in verbal or it will be in a document that can be printed and disseminated. But monitoring requires that the reporting is done, or the reporting is disseminated, or the information is given to the right people. And this brings us to the second bit of policy monitoring and evaluation, that is evaluation. So we are being described that evaluation is a systematic and objective assessment of an ongoing or a completed project, program, of policy, which looks into the design, implementation, and results. So evaluation is a little bit different because evaluation looks into the aspect of the policy has already been made, it's complete, it's in the implementation stage, but now you want to see, based on the specific aspects of the project, are there certain aspects that you want to check on? Like, if it is the implementation of this policy, is that what you want to evaluate? If it is the goals and milestones, is that what you want to check on? So evaluation picks specific parts of the policy and then you get to expound on it, or you get to check on it on terms of its progress. So evaluation can be done like in the beginning, it can be done like in the middle, or you can do at the end of the project. Normally it is very time specific, or it is normally task specific. So you can choose, either you do before implementation, during the implementation, or it can be at the end of the implementation. That's why we are saying this is a systematic and objective assessment of either an ongoing or a completed project. So however, I told that evaluation allows more rigorous analysis of the implementation of the intervention, because it gives you an answer as to why one effort worked better than the other. So it gives you some avenue to compare how the different areas are working, or how the different parts of the project are interrelating. Also being able to see the challenges and the different ways you can intervene to eliminate all these challenges. And lastly, we are told evaluation provides information that is not readily available from monitoring, so which can be derived from the use of evaluation criteria, where you focus more on impact, relevance, efficiency, effectiveness, sustainability, and coherence. So in monitoring and evaluation, there are these aspects that are usually put as a priority when you're doing evaluation, and you are expected that in the project stage, when you're evaluating, you should focus on the impact of the project, the relevance of the project, the efficiency, effectiveness, sustainability, and coherence. Those ones are usually treated as part of the priority areas when it comes to handling a project evaluation task. And finally, we have stage 7, which looks into policy change. We're told sometimes this stage is usually disregarded, although it is a very important stage. So it addresses various type of impacts. You want to see what change did the policy bring in the different areas of the program, and you want to also confirm if this policy has brought any positive impact or negative impact. And you can look at the impact in different ways. You can look at direct impact, like directly what is the change that this policy is bringing in the society or in the population that is being checked on. And indirectly, you can say through this policy which other populations are benefiting, which was not directly discussed in this particular policy, or which was not directly the agenda in this particular policy. And then you can also evaluate policy change in terms of being either short-term or long-term change. and short term could be within 12 months or within a year, while long term can be extrapolated all the way to like 5 years, 6 years, or even 10 years, depending on what defined long term in that particular policy. And so sometimes you're told, because it's disregarded, most of the time policy change is usually taken within the evaluation process, but it is good if you can define it separately for the purpose of learning. It's good to bring it separately. And this brings us to the end of our lesson on the policy formulation process or formulation cycle, where we discussed the 7 stages that are part and parcel of our policy formulation. So thank you so much for staying with me to the end. Don't forget to subscribe, leave us a comment, and also share with your fellow teammates who you feel might enjoy from this lesson. Thank you, and see you in our next lessons. Bye bye.